Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of ZB's Horsepower Talk. As always, I'm ZB Zack Brown. All right, everybody, I have Don Kreitz Jr. and Kassidy Kreitz here. Thank you guys for coming on. How's everything going and preparing for the season?
Things have been going pretty good. Busy week this week with Lance running for the Outlaws, but I feel like we get started kind of early and then kind of work slow to make it a little easier.
And for those that don't know, Kassidy is obviously Donnie's daughter, and Donnie's a Hall of Fame sprint car driver. And so, Donnie, how's it really been transitioning from racer into an owner and now dad of a sprint car driver?
Well, it's probably easier to be a owner than a dad owner, but an owner with Lance, we were very fortunate to have success almost right away with Lance. So, it made the owner thing kind of easy and, helped me forget about driving as far as my own. And when we go with Kassidy, it's fun. Not as much pressure as with Lance, because every time we go with Lance, everyone expects us to win every time out. But so when we go with Kassidy, it's kind of fun. And, when she does good and, better than expected, it's fun. And, it's going to be tough now that she's in the 410s, but she did pretty good last year in her first year.
So Cassidy, seeing Lance running your dad's car and everything, and I guess you've had a close-up perspective and just learning a bunch from Lance, I would assume.
Yeah, I guess so. I think really the biggest thing that helped me was even the stuff that you're not like asking a question or anything like that, but just being in a spot where you're watching multiple races every week, whether, it's on Flow or Dirt Vision or actually at the track with him, and just understanding like the stuff that he feels with his car and, some of the stuff that he just does automatically and learning that terminology and kind of just absorbing it that way.
So what do you do kind of behind the scenes? I mean, a lot of people don't, they'll see you on the track, but when when Lance is racing and everything, I know you're in the trailer doing a bunch of work a little bit behind the scenes. So what are you doing on those races?
So on Lance's races, I'm pretty hands off at the track, I would say. I mean, I normally watch, especially for time trial stuff, like track's doing, and where guys are running and stuff like that to help out a little bit. But mostly, I mean, I actually don't really help out on Lance's car that much anymore, I would say, now that I race a little bit more. Just because I'm me and, a couple other guys work on my car throughout the week, but not necessarily as much as Lance's guys. So my attention's definitely more that route. But I mean, it goes back and forth. Whenever we have issues, I'm probably more involved at the track. But when it's just a normal day by day thing, I'm more kind of just watching.
Okay. Well, Donnie, did you always know that she was going to end up racing from a young age? And I mean, obviously, she grew up nothing but racing with you. So is that something you kind of expected her to do, or is it something she kind of found an interest later on?
I would say she found interest a little bit later. Maybe not real late. I mean, she probably always wanted to race, but it was tough because I was racing and but I was probably hoping maybe that she wasn't going to. I was happy when we had a girl, and I was thinking that I wouldn't have to go. We wouldn't be going through racing the whole time. With your own kid, only because when you do it, how especially in 410s, how like cutthroat it is, and and you don't really want to put your daughter through that, but she wants to do it. She's been putting the work in. She maintains her own car, so we're gonna see it through. As long as she wants to do it.
Well, Cassie, what age did you actually start racing, and what did you start racing?
So I started in what's called a slingshot. It kind of just looks like a bigger go-kart with a body on it, almost like a miniature modified.
Yeah.
When I was 12, and pretty much actually ran way more back then, probably around 25 races my first 2 to 3 years or so, before getting a 305, and then last year 410.
What made you guys decide to jump from 305 to 410? I mean, obviously, I know 410 is the goal at the end, but such a jump from a 305 to 410, that's a big difference.
Yeah, I think like motor wise, getting something that we didn't have wasn't really realistic. And then also just like in our area, they have 358s, but as far as like 360s goes, there's not really anywhere that runs weekly or anything like that. And from a 358 perspective, we typically run at Port mostly, and they don't really run there either. So logistically, it was kind of the only option. But I feel like Pry was also, the end goal eventually. Whether it was a good idea at the time, I don't know, but it was definitely the end goal.
Well, Donnie, how nerve-wracking was it that she wanted to jump up to 410? I mean, obviously, with your career ending with that injury that you had, and then seeing your daughter jump up to a 410, where I mean, they're faster, and it could be a lot more of a risk to have serious crashes. So I'm sure the dad side of you kicked in a lot and was really probably got you thinking when she wanted to jump up that way.
In a way, yes, and in a way, no, because with the 305s, naturally, you have a lot of guys that are just starting
Mhm.
and, aren't naturally as experienced as the 410 guys, as far as keeping their car straight, as far as if someone spins out in front of them, missing them, watching ahead, running with the 410 guys, especially in Central PA, as far advanced as the 410s are in Central PA, probably more than anywhere else in the country, that you have a good field every night. And, all the guys are good drivers. So you don't have to worry about it as much that way. Naturally, she is going faster, but, she mainly runs Port Royal. There's a lot of room there. Naturally, anything can happen at any time, but I wasn't really worried as much the safety wise moving to 410s.
Okay. Well, Cassie, going through school when you were growing up and everything, and you started the racing, how did everybody kind of see that? I mean, everybody expects, yeah, there's boys that want to go racing and everything, but it's kind of different when a girl's growing up and she's racing. So, how was that going through just growing up and with your friends and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like we're far enough outside of Central PA. Like, it's not really even a conversation or anything. None of my
Okay.
friends at school watched, a NASCAR race, sprint car race, or anything like that. I'd say really no one in my grade did or anything. Just based on our area, we're realistically an hour, a little bit more away from the Grove and, Central PA racing, and almost kind of in the center of between there and Philly. So wasn't really ever a conversation. I feel like the biggest difference for me was just kind of having, stuff to do every Friday night and everything like that. Whereas, all my friends kind of, they did their own school sports or hung out with their family in a different way.
Okay. What? So I maybe I've missed it, but what's your schedule looking like this year, Cassidy? And maybe Donnie, you can touch on it too. What are your plans to run this year? I know there's a hectic schedule, especially heading out to Eldora this year, which is pretty awesome for Lance. And so I know it's a lot of crazy going on there. So what are you looking at right now to run?
Yeah, I'd say it probably changes realistically very weekly. Really just based on Lance's schedule. His schedule changes a lot too, even though
Yeah.
we kind of do have a set plan in place. I feel like it's kind of already changed for him. So I'll run whenever he's not racing, definitely. Saturdays at Port, we might try and run the Grove a little bit when he's not racing, more in the summer. But definitely every Saturday that he's not racing, depending on how things are going, we might try and take 2 cars. I think that's a little bit difficult for us, just not, in our capabilities, but maybe deeper in the summer, we'll try that again.
Have you raced 2 cars with you and Lance racing each other yet?
We tried it last week and it didn't really go that well. Kind of hurt both of us, but for the first time taking both, I don't know that was necessarily unreasonable, but still it's not something that we're really set up for. We kind of have where we're barely making it with just one, let alone having two setups there.
Right. Well, Donnie, this one kind of will go towards you on this. With the Outlaws coming into town this week, obviously they were supposed to be here last week. Obviously, Mother Nature had a different plan, and there's potential that if the Grove ran on Sunday, you'd have the new tire setup to get a one-up kind of on the Outlaws. But going into this week now, everything's kind of level playing field. So what's kind of the plan to get these cars ready for Friday? Just Friday, I'm assuming, right? You're not running Lincoln.
Probably not running Lincoln. We'll make that decision Friday night after the feature between Lance and Davey and myself. Just we'll wait and see how it goes Friday. We really don't know what to expect with the tires. I think at least a couple of the Outlaws might have tested them, and since we haven't been on the track, I'm sure it's going to take something different in the car setup compared to what we had last year, which seemed to work pretty good towards the end of the year. The bad part is that you get a couple laps in warm-ups, and normally in warm-ups, the track's not at a place where you can really judge how the car's handling.
Right.
And so then you go into time trials, which in an Outlaw show is pretty much the whole night, at least to get you going. I mean, if you're timed 35th, you're pretty much not going to win the show that night. It's a struggle just to make it at that point when you start in the back of everything. So, we'll just do the best we can. Our team has the most experience at Williams Grove of anyone that's going to be there, between Davey and Lance and myself. So, we're going to do the best we can do. I'm hopeful. I think the new tires, could be a good thing the way they are. We don't really know that, but I think it hopefully will make racing maybe a little bit better. Hopefully it'll help widen the track out more and make for more passing.
Well, Kassidy, what are you going to be doing kind of this week to help them get prepped up for this week? I mean, Donnie touched on it. There's so much experience on there, but it's also nice to have a younger face, a fresh face in this to kind of add different perspective going into these races.
Yeah, honestly, I at this point am not super involved on Lance's car anymore. Like I said, I feel like my biggest thing, especially at these time trial shows, I normally just watch the track a little bit for time trials because it can change pretty quickly. Outside of that, when we're running 2 days in a row, I'm definitely significantly more involved just because there's a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. But really, mostly just watching the track during time trials is normally how I help out during these big shows for him.
Is there any plans, and either one of you can answer, is there any plans for Kassidy to run against the Outlaws at any time in the near future?
I would say not in the near future or anything like that. Last year I think I ran a little over 10 local shows, and then probably this year might be more like 25. We'll see, but realistically not at that point yet. But maybe down the line, a couple years.
how for you driving the car, transitioning from the 305 to 410, is that have you found it, I don't know, as a, I guess, easier to drive the 410s, or you were able to adapt to them better, or how did that all go?
I mean, it's definitely not easier. I think one of the nice things that helped me with the 305 was just understanding the space that the
Mhm.
car was. But it is like a whole different ball game. Obviously, the competition is, 100 million times harder, and it's definitely harder to drive and stuff like that. But I mean, overall, I would say, our expectations were they probably couldn't get any lower going into last year, and like we outperformed our expectations, but it's also a moving target, and I think everything changes week over week. One week could feel okay, and then the next week could feel absolutely terrible.
How many years did you run 305s before going to 410s?
I think 6. I ran probably between 10 and 15 shows each year.
Okay. Um, so Donnie, I want to touch on this. Um, Obviously, everybody's seen the schedule now that where y'all racing, and the big thing that jumped out was Eldora. And I talked to Lance about it. Obviously, the Eldora Million's a big deal, and that's, I mean, obviously what I assume drove you guys to do that. But it was a big. I know it's a big decision. There's a lot of big purse races all throughout the country. So I asked Lance what ultimately led to that decision to really try to focus on Eldora and get some, obviously racing a little bit in May, and then doing the big races there in July. So what ultimately led to all of that?
Well, when someone puts a
Well,
million
besides a million.
on take a chance like that, number one, I feel if we can, we need to try and support them. Support Tony Stewart and Eldora for going out on the limb like that, and we know it's going to be tough. It's hard enough to try and beat the Outlaws on your own home tracks, yet to go to a track. So this would be the 8th year Lance is in the car, and we haven't went to Eldora once.
Yeah.
Back then, the last time I went when I was driving was, from way back around 99 or 2000 or something. So it's going to be really tough, but we're hoping we can get there once or twice before the $1 million race, and hopefully get our setup down a little bit, and just at least get in the show, hopefully, and be competitive and have a chance.
Right. Well, it's awesome. We're all looking forward to that. I'm gonna try to make it up in the July race for the million. May is gonna be a different story. Won't be able to make it up for those races. We have a little girl on the way, so I got to also try to figure out how to keep her out of racing too. But with obviously Lance having so much success in this car for you, and now Kassidy going into here, is it is all this experience for you, Kassidy? Um, Everybody that's involved with that team with Lance, is that experience kind of starting to um, rub off on you and be able to make you a better driver and learn a lot faster from all that experience? I mean, I think it's probably over 100 years experience total.
Well, probably well over 100 almost, really. If you add Davey, he makes up most
Yeah,
of that.
he's like 60 or something, 60 years of it or something.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I feel like being in a good car helps significantly. But then yeah, so from the driving side, it definitely helps. Just I think even the ways of working and understanding the amount of time something takes, and then also the maintenance and how to build a car properly, and having that all sorted out in addition to all the driving stuff. um Honestly, I think the biggest thing is just having that understanding of how much time, just because it is
Mhm.
24/7 sort of thing. And I think that might not be something that's always easily understood. So being in a situation where it's been like that my entire life has definitely helped too.
Well, as a female driver in a male dominated sport, you've got to see and maybe you don't notice how significant it is, but it is a real big deal having a female driver in a sport like this, and to kind of pioneer to have more girls grow up and seeing like women like you race, and it inspires them to race. So it's got to be a pretty neat thing to see with women starting to come into the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely really cool. I feel like when I was growing up, there's always kind of been one female who runs in Central PA, so that's, definitely good. I've always kind of been more of the mindset, like, never really thought about it, just because it never, doesn't, I mean, it impacts me, I guess, but it doesn't impact me at the same time.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact what I'm doing or anything like that. But I mean, definitely is good, as far as the whole social aspect and everything like that goes.
Well, so at least for this season, and I guess moving forward, this can go to both of you. You can either one of you can chip into it. But what are the goals and expectations for I guess the purple and blue 69K this year?
I mean, I think for me, it's just, it changes. But realistically, to be better at the end of the year than we were at the beginning. And then also to just race more and race more consistently. I feel like that's kind of been a struggle point for me, at least, racing and then not racing for, 3+ weeks. I think last year there was a time where I didn't race for almost 2 months, which I felt really hurt me in the long run. So I think a controllable goal that we can really set is just be in a position where we can race more consistently. And then as far as a goal, that could be the repercussions of that, I think just being better, towards the end of the year.
And Donnie, what about you? What are you looking for her this year?
Well, last year she actually made every 410 show that we went to, and a bunch of them, there was over 40 cars there, and beat a lot of good guys and had top 10. So making every show, running running the races to the end, that you don't get crashed out or anything, and hopefully getting into the top 10. She had enough speed to do that last year. We just have to get her comfortable in the car, get these, obviously we're going to be on the new tires too within a couple weeks or whatever here in Central PA. So I think the tires should be good for her and good for Lance. So hopefully that'll help out a little bit. We'll figure it out, hopefully right away. And she can get some good runs in. I know the very first race she ran, and me and Davey were sitting in the stands, and she started last because she knew that was the right thing to do in the heat race, because we didn't want to mess anyone up, and it was a draw show, but she just started last, and first lap passed like 4 cars coming off 2 going down the backstretch, and because it was slick and she could get underneath them. And so Davey looked at me, and he was like really surprised, and I was too. It almost every time out last year, she way beat any expectations that any of us had, probably including herself. So it's hard to back that up, but like she said, it changes almost weekly, your goals, and hopefully we can get her a little more track time. That's very tough when you're starting out, again, especially in the 410s. When I was racing the whole last bunch of years, I would only run like Friday nights at Williams Grove, and I had been racing for 35 years, but only running one night a week. Like, I'd come back and you'd run warm-ups, you'd run the heat race, and you wouldn't actually really feel comfortable in the car to about 10 laps into the feature. And then with her not having that near as much experience as me, and only not even getting to run every week, it's just, it is a lot harder, but our circumstances are what they are. But we'll try and get her as many shows as we can.
Well, Cassidy, if you keep improving like this and keep showing a bunch of these guys up, you might not have a choice but to tell your dad, "Hey, we need to run a outlaw show or two this year or next year."
Yeah, I mean, if that improvement's there, I think it's realistic. But just have to get to that point.
Right. Well, Cassidy, so your dad's a Hall of Famer, and growing up, obviously my grandpa's a Hall of Famer. My dad was a mechanic for a long time, so I'm third generation as well. But for me, it was never really anything I thought about. I'm like, this is just my grandpa. This is what he does. I mean, I don't really see it anything like that. Do you even, or I guess growing up, and you know now, but do you ever really think about, hey, my dad was pretty damn good at this, and he's still really good, got a great team and everything?
I mean, definitely not when I was growing up. I would say more now, realistically, just because social media and stuff that you see online. I think
Yep.
it's different if that wasn't the case. But even still, it's just a everyday sort of thing for us. I feel like. I actually think the biggest thing when I realized that Davey wasn't a normal person.
Yeah.
That took me a while to understand. But he's all, I also don't see him as much, so that might have been part of that.
Well, I mean, he'll be the first to tell you. He'll be like, "I'm just some guy that's worked on race cars my whole life." He's like, "There's nothing special or anything." And I talked to him on here a while back, and that was a big reason for starting this up, to get him to talk about everything, because it's not around everywhere. So that's definitely cool that you get to experience that, just like your dad did with his career, and it's awesome he's still helping out and be able to, I guess, influence your career as well. Um, One last thing to kind of wrap things up. What so I'm having a daughter here soon, and this will kind of go with both of you, but I have a son too. But for, I guess, parents, and then this will be for you, Donnie. I guess parents of daughters that want to get into some sort of racing and motorsports, what kind of advice do you have for them? And same question for you, Cassie, but as a like a daughter's point of view.
I, actually how Kassidy started out, and one of my sponsors at the time actually got her the car, bought her the slingshot, and kind of, I'm gonna say, forced me into it, or I probably would have never have done it for, maybe when she became of age to run sprint cars, but otherwise, and it was a good way to go, even though I'm going to say those slingshot cars were probably more of what you would do if you were going to run a modified in your career, rather than a sprint car. But anything you look at, the quarter midget thing, the go-kart thing is has become so advanced, and you really have to spend a lot of time and dump a bunch of money, in those cars. Where this car, everyone kind of had the same cars, and you had to go buy the motor somewhere, and it was kind of a lot more controlled than most of the other divisions out there, for kids. So it actually worked out, good, and it's good to get in for a parent. We came from racing, but a lot of parents' kids start, you know, didn't don't know that much about racing, and it's a pretty easy division to start in for anyone. You don't have to have racing experience. There's only one shock to run. There's only a couple coil springs. It's not really that much to learn on those cars. So that, something like that is to me a lot easier to get started for most parents.
Cassidy?
I think for me, just the biggest thing is racing as much as you can and racing consistently. I feel like sometimes it's not super beneficial when even if you are running 20 races, if those are spread out over 10 months, it kind of, it's almost like you're not running 20 races, and it might be a little bit more beneficial to run, 20 races over 3 months or something like that. So I think, just being in a place where you can race a lot and also be really focused on that is really important.
Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you taking the time to meet up with me and come on here and kind of get a different perspective than everybody's used to seeing. Obviously, we wish you all the best of luck. And Cassie, try to make sure your dad doesn't get too stressed out working on these cars, especially when these big outlaw shows happen.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Zach. And it was nice seeing you down at Charlotte and coming around and taking care of our area there, making sure no one was going to come and beat us up. And so appreciated that.
Thought we were in trouble at first.
Well, if you guys decide to race down here again, just let me know. It's and I already told my grandpa, I was like, yeah, you better find a ride to hitch down here and come to the race as well. So hopefully you can bring him along, and hopefully you guys will be able to get down here.
Sounds good. Yep.
All right, everybody. Don Kreitz Jr. and Kassidy Kreitz.